The person I loved most in the world systematically dismantled everything we built together, and I didn't see it coming until it was almost too late. This is the story I've been afraid to tell completely, not because I'm ashamed anymore, but because living through it once was barely survivable. Reliving it on the page feels like volunteering for a second round of trauma. But here's why I'm doing it anyway. Because hundreds of entrepreneurs are walking into the same trap right now, trusting the wrong people with the right intentions, and they deserve to know what partnership betrayal actually looks like before it's too late. Before I take you deeper into this story, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? The email arrived at 2:47 a.m., and I knew before opening it that my life was about to detonate. My husband of 8 years, my business partner of 10, had just locked me out of every system we built together. Bank accounts frozen. Website redirected. Employees told I was taking a sabbatical. The company we'd scraped together from a 2-bedroom apartment, the one that now generated $4.3 million annually, had been surgically excised from my life while I slept. Mark hadn't just left me. He'd performed a corporate amputation, and I was bleeding out financially while the law moved at the speed of molasses. I sat in our kitchen, his kitchen now I supposed, staring at the glowing screen of my laptop. My hands trembled as I refreshed my email, hoping the message was a mistake, a hack, anything but what I knew it was. The subject line read, "Operational changes, effective immediately." It was signed by Mark, but copied to our entire staff of 37 people, our investors and our major clients. Sarah will be stepping back from day-to-day operations to focus on personal matters. All business inquiries should be directed to me moving forward. Thank you for your understanding during this transition. Personal matters. As if I'd chosen this. As if I'd woken up that Tuesday morning and decided to abandon everything I'd sacrificed for. 3 years earlier we'd been different people. Or maybe I'd just been blind. The night we came up with the idea for Catalyst Marketing, Mark and I were sprawled across our threadbare couch, drinking cheap wine and complaining about our jobs. He was an account manager at a soulless advertising firm. I was freelancing as a copywriter, scraping together enough clients to make rent but never quite breaking through to stability. We were 28, exhausted and desperate for something that felt like it mattered. What if we just did it? Mark said, his eyes bright with that manic energy that used to make my heart race. Started our own thing. We already know more than half the people running agencies in this city. I laughed. With what capital? Our collective debt is probably 6 figures. So we bootstrap. We use my contacts from the firm, your portfolio, and we undercut everyone on price until we build a client base. He sat up, suddenly animated. Think about it, Sarah. You're brilliant at strategy. I'm good with people. We could actually build something. The idea terrified me. I'd grown up watching my father's small business collapse during the 2008 recession, watching him dissolve into someone I didn't recognize. Starting a business felt like volunteering for that kind of devastation. But Mark was persuasive. He always had been. We filed the LLC paperwork that weekend. I contributed $8,000 from my savings, everything I had. Mark put in $12,000. We agreed to split ownership 50-50. Equal partners. Equal risk. Equal reward. Those first 18 months nearly destroyed us. We worked 100-hour weeks, pitching anyone who would listen. I wrote proposals until my eyes burned. Mark networked relentlessly, schmoozing at every industry event, buying drinks we couldn't afford to buy connections we desperately needed. We lived on ramen and ambition, convinced we were one breakthrough away from making it all worthwhile. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A mid-sized tech startup called Velocity that needed a complete rebrand. They'd been turned down by the big agencies for being too small, too risky. We pitched them a comprehensive package at half the market rate, promising results the big firms couldn't deliver. Mark closed the deal with his characteristic charm. I pulled 3 all-nighters to deliver a strategy that exceeded every expectation. The rebrand tripled their customer acquisition. They told everyone. Suddenly, our calendar was full. By year 3, we'd hired our first employees. By year 5, we'd moved into a real office, the kind with exposed brick and conference rooms with names instead of numbers. We'd become the kind of agency we used to envy, the scrappy success story people pointed to as proof that hard work and talent could still win. Our personal relationship evolved alongside the business. We'd been dating when we started Catalyst, but the stress of those early years transformed our romance into something harder, more practical. We got married at City Hall during a lunch break, then went back to the office to finish a pitch deck. No honeymoon, we couldn't afford the time away. Our wedding rings were simple silver bands that cost $200 combined. I told myself it was romantic in its own way. We were building something bigger than ourselves. The sacrifice meant something. I should have noticed when Mark started changing. It was subtle at first. He began taking calls in his car instead of his office. He'd schedule client meetings without adding them to our shared calendar. When I asked about specific accounts, he'd give vague answers about complex negotiations that he'd fill me in on later. Later never came. "You're being paranoid," he said when I finally confronted him about the opacity. We were at our favorite restaurant, a Thai place we'd been going to since before we could afford appetizers. "I'm just trying to take some of the pressure off you. You're always stressed about the numbers." "I'm stressed because I'm a co-owner," I said. "I should know what's happening with our major accounts." "Our company," he corrected, reaching across the table to take my hand. "And you do know. I sent you the quarterly reports. Reports you compiled. I want to see the raw data, Mark. I want access to the client communications, the contract terms." "Jesus, Sarah." He pulled his hand back, his jaw tightening. "Do you not trust me? After everything we've built together?" The question landed like a trap. If I said yes, I looked paranoid and ungrateful. If I said no, I had to drop it. I was learning that Mark had become skilled at these conversational maneuvers, at making my reasonable requests sound like personal attacks. "It's not about trust," I said carefully. "It's about partnership. We're supposed to be equals. We are equals. But that doesn't mean we have to do every single thing together. Division of labor, remember? I handle client relations, you handle strategy and creative. It's always worked. It had worked in the beginning. But somewhere along the way, division of labor had become division of power, and I was only now realizing how much I'd been systematically excluded from. I let it go that night. That was my first mistake. The second came 6 months later when Mark suggested we restructure for efficiency. He'd been talking to some consultant friend who specialized in scaling agencies. The recommendation was to create clearer hierarchies, defined roles, separation of duties. "It'll be better for the team," Mark explained, showing me documents I should have read more carefully. "Right now, they don't always know who to report to. This creates clear channels." What it actually created was a structure where Mark controlled client relationships, financial decisions, and operational authority while I was relegated to Chief Strategy Officer. A title that sounded impressive but held no actual power. I'd become a very well-paid employee of the company I'd co-founded. I signed the papers anyway. We were married. We were partners. Why would I question him? The cracks really started showing about a year before everything exploded. Mark began traveling more. Always for client meetings he insisted were too sensitive for video calls. He'd be gone for 4 days at a time, returning exhausted and irritable. When I asked about the trips, he'd snap at me about micromanaging. "You wanted me to handle clients," he'd say. "So let me handle them." Our sex life had evaporated years earlier. A casualty of stress and exhaustion we both pretended was normal. Now our emotional intimacy was following the same path. We lived in the same house, ran the same company, but we'd become strangers who shared a mortgage. I threw myself deeper into work, telling myself that was enough. Catalyst was thriving. We'd just been named one of the city's fastest-growing agencies. Our revenue had quadrupled in 3 years. I'd built something that mattered, something that would last. I had no idea Mark was already planning to take it all away. The warning signs were there, obvious in retrospect. The new business account he opened, for easier client transactions. The way he started keeping files on his personal laptop instead of our shared server. The afternoon I overheard him on the phone saying, "Don't worry, she won't be a problem much longer." When I asked who he was talking about, he said it was a client's difficult employee. I believed him because the alternative was too terrible to consider. Then came the night that changed everything. I came home early from a strategy session with a client, planning to surprise Mark with dinner from his favorite Italian place. His car was in the driveway. The lights were on upstairs. Nothing seemed unusual. I walked into our bedroom and found him with Jessica, our director of client services. She was 26, ambitious, and had always been just a little too eager to laugh at Mark's jokes. They were tangled in our sheets in our bed, and the sound that came out of me wasn't quite human. Jessica grabbed her clothes and ran. Mark just stared at me, not even bothering to cover himself. "How long?" I managed to ask. "Does it matter?" "How long?" "8 months." He said it flatly without remorse. And honestly, Sarah, you should have seen this coming. We haven't been a real couple in years. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. We're married. We have a business together. The business will be fine, he interrupted. Better probably, once we're not pretending anymore. I left that night, checked into a hotel and called my sister. She drove 4 hours to sit with me while I cried so hard I vomited. I was devastated by the affair, yes, but more than that, I was terrified about what it meant for Catalyst. Mark and I were entangled in every possible way. How did you unweave a life you'd spent a decade building? I hired a divorce attorney the next morning. Her name was Patricia Chun, and she had a reputation for being ruthless but fair. She was 50-something, impeccably dressed, and had the kind of exhausted eyes that suggested she'd seen every variety of human betrayal. Tell me about the business, she said after I'd explained the situation. I walked her through Catalyst structure, our ownership split, our revenue. She took notes, her expression growing progressively more grim. And the restructuring he did last year, she said. Do you have copies of those documents? They're on the company server. Why? Patricia looked at me like I was a child who just admitted to accepting candy from strangers. Because I need to understand what you actually own versus what you think you own. These restructurings during marriage are often designed to minimize a spouse's claim to assets. My stomach dropped. But we're 50-50 partners. It's in the original LLC agreement, which may have been superseded by the restructuring documents. I'll need to review everything. Over the following week, Patricia dissected our business with surgical precision. What she found made me physically ill. The restructuring hadn't just changed reporting structures. Mark had somehow shifted the ownership structure to give himself 75% equity, leaving me with 25%. He'd done it through a series of capital contributions I didn't remember authorizing, using funds I didn't remember approving. When I confronted him about it, he claimed I'd signed off on everything. You were busy with the rebranding project for Velocity, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. I handled the administrative stuff. Like always. This isn't administrative stuff, Mark. This is our ownership agreement, which you signed. I have your signature on all the documents. I demanded to see them. The signatures looked like mine, similar enough that I couldn't be sure I hadn't signed them in the haze of those 18-hour days, distracted and exhausted, trusting Mark to handle things properly. Patricia was less convinced. These look forged, she said, examining copies. But proving that will be expensive and time-consuming. And even if we can prove it, we still have to deal with the fact that you've been operating under this structure for over a year. That creates legal precedent. So what do? We fight. But you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get ugly and it's going to take time. Months, possibly years. And it's going to cost you a significant amount of money. I didn't have a choice. Catalyst wasn't just a business to me. It was my identity, my financial security, my proof that I could build something meaningful. I wasn't going to let Mark take it without a fight. That resolve lasted exactly 6 days, until Mark launched his first tactical strike. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, the one I mentioned at the beginning, but I left out the worst part. Mark had been planning it for months. He'd systematically moved our client relationships into accounts I couldn't access. He'd shifted our primary bank account to an institution where only he was an authorized signer. He'd copied all our proprietary methodologies, client lists, and strategic documents onto servers I couldn't reach. And then while I was sleeping, he'd activated what amounted to a corporate coup. By the time I woke up, I'd been locked out of our email system, our project management software, our financial accounts, our office building. He'd changed the key codes, our website backend, our social media accounts. I called our office manager, Linda, who'd been with us since year 2. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice strained. Sarah, I'm so sorry. Mark called an emergency meeting this morning. He said you were taking a leave of absence for health reasons, and that all communication should go through him until further notice. Health reasons. The implication being that I was unstable, unreliable, incapable of managing the business. Linda, that's not true. I'm perfectly fine. This is. I know. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Everyone knows something weird is happening. But Mark's our boss now, and I have a mortgage to pay. I can't afford to lose this job. That's when I understood the full scope of Mark's strategy. He wasn't just trying to steal the business. He was trying to isolate me, to make sure I had no allies, no access, no leverage. He was erasing me from the company I'd built, rewriting the narrative so that I became a footnote in Catalyst's story. I called Patricia in a panic. She told me to come to her office immediately. "He can't do this," I said, pacing in front of her desk. "It's illegal. It's corporate theft." "It's complicated," Patricia corrected. "He's still legally the majority owner, even if we dispute how he got there. As majority owner, he has certain rights to make operational decisions. What he can't do is completely freeze you out financially or violate the terms of your operating agreement. So we can stop him? We can file for emergency relief. We'll argue that he's deliberately sabotaging your ownership interest and request that the court appoint a temporary manager for the business until the divorce is finalized. But it's going to take time. Courts don't move fast, especially for business disputes and divorce cases. You need to be prepared for this to get worse before it gets better." She was right. Got so much worse. Within a week of being locked out, I started getting calls from our creditors. Apparently, Mark had stopped paying several major bills, including the lease on our office space and the insurance premiums. When the creditors couldn't reach him, they came after me. I was still legally on the hook as a business owner, even though I had no access to the accounts. Then our landlord called. Mark had given notice that Catalyst would be vacating the building. He was moving the company to a new location I didn't know about, under a new entity name I hadn't heard of. "Wait," I said to Patricia when I told her. "Can he just create a new company? If he takes the clients, the employees, and the intellectual property, then yes, effectively. He can hollow out Catalyst and leave you with an empty shell. By the time we get court intervention, there might not be anything left to fight over." I felt like I was drowning. Every day brought a new crisis, a new way that Mark was dismantling the life we'd built. And I was powerless to stop it because the law moved at a glacial pace while Mark was sprinting toward the finish line. The breaking point came when I checked my personal bank account and found it empty. Mark had cleaned out our joint account. $43,000 that represented my entire liquid savings. When I called the bank, they told me that as a joint account holder, he had every right to withdraw the funds. "But that's my money," I said, my voice breaking. "It's joint money," the bank representative said, apologetic but firm. "You both had equal access." I sat in my car in the bank parking lot and screamed until my throat was raw. Then I called my sister and asked if I could move into her spare bedroom. I couldn't afford my hotel anymore. I couldn't afford anything. That night I made a decision. If Mark wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. I just needed to figure out how. The answer came from an unexpected source. Rebecca Nguyen, Catalyst's former senior account manager. She'd left the company 6 months earlier after a blowout with Mark, and I'd always suspected there was more to the story than the pursuing other opportunities line we'd fed to clients. Rebecca called me 3 days after Mark's coup, her voice tight with anger. "I heard what he did," she said, "and I want to help." We met at a coffee shop far from our usual haunts, somewhere Mark would never think to look. Rebecca looked good, better than she had during her last months at Catalyst, when she'd been perpetually stressed and exhausted. "He tried to do the same thing to me," she said once we'd sat down. "Not as dramatically, but same playbook. He systematically cut me out of client relationships, redirected my deals to himself or Jessica, made me look incompetent to the team. When I called him out on it, he fired me and claimed it was performance-based. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were married to him, Sarah. And because he made it clear that if I made waves, he'd destroy my reputation in the industry. He said he'd tell every agency in the city that I was impossible to work with, that I'd stolen clients, that I was unstable. I couldn't risk it. I have student loans, rent, a life. But you're risking it now." Rebecca's smile was sharp. "Now I have a new job at a great agency, and I'm out from under his thumb. And now I know he did the same thing to you, which means I'm not crazy, and neither are you. So yeah, I'm willing to risk it." She pulled out a folder thick with documents. I kept copies of everything. Emails where Mark instructed me to falsify client reports. Messages where he admitted to undercutting my deals. Evidence of him taking credit for my work. And something else. Proof that he was siphoning money from company accounts into personal investments. My heart was racing. How much money? Over 6 months, probably close to $300,000. He was using company funds to buy real estate properties in his name only. I noticed it when I was doing expense reports and saw weird transfers that didn't match any business purpose. When I asked him about it, he said they were loans the company was making to him as majority owner. "That's not legal," I said, my mind spinning. That's self-dealing. That's exactly what you need to take him down, Rebecca finished. I took the folder with shaking hands. For the first time since Mark's betrayal, I felt something other than despair. I felt angry, furious, and I was going to use that anger to burn his entire plan to the ground. Patricia nearly kissed me when I showed her Rebecca's documents. This is massive, she said, flipping through the pages. This isn't just marital assets we can fight over in divorce court. This is fraud, corporate malfeasance. If even half of this is provable, we can file criminal charges. Will that help me get the business back? It'll help you get justice. Whether that translates to getting the business back depends on how much damage Mark has already done, and whether there's anything left to recover. We filed an emergency motion that afternoon, requesting immediate court intervention. Patricia argued that Mark was engaged in ongoing fraud and that without immediate action, I would suffer irreparable harm. She attached Rebecca's documents as evidence, along with a detailed accounting of Mark's actions since he'd locked me out. The court scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks out. 2 weeks that Mark would use to continue dismantling everything. But I wasn't going to wait passively anymore. I started reaching out to our employees carefully, quietly, through personal emails and phone numbers I still had. I asked them to document everything. Mark's directives, any unusual requests, anything that seemed off. Most were too scared to help. But 3 people, Linda, our office manager, Tom, our lead graphic designer, and Aisha, our junior strategist, agreed to keep records. I also hired a forensic accountant named David Rostov, using the last of my available credit to pay his retainer. David was recommended by Patricia, and he had a reputation for being able to find money people tried to hide. I gave him access to everything I still had, old bank statements, tax returns, business documents, and asked him to track where our money had gone. This'll take time, David warned. Your ex covered his tracks pretty well, but nobody's perfect. He'll have left a trail somewhere. While David worked, I focused on our clients. I couldn't access them through official channels, but I had their personal contact information from years of relationship building. I started reaching out, explaining that I was dealing with a difficult situation but wanted to ensure continuity of service. The responses were mixed. Some clients were sympathetic but worried about disrupting their current projects. Others admitted that Mark had already reached out, positioning himself as the real talent behind Catalyst and suggesting I'd been dead weight for years. That hurt more than I expected. I poured everything into those client relationships. I'd sacrificed sleep, health, and my marriage to deliver results. And Mark was rewriting history, making it seem like he'd done it all alone. But a few clients were loyal. Velocity, our first major success, was one of them. Their CEO, Marcus, called me back within an hour of my message. Sarah, what the hell is going on? Mark sent us some weird email about restructuring, but it sounded off. I explained the situation, professionally, carefully, without bad-mouthing Mark more than necessary. Marcus listened in silence, then swore. That's messed up. You know, most of our team wanted to work with you specifically, right? Mark's fine, but you're the one who actually gets our business. I appreciate that, Marcus. And I'm hoping. We're terminating our contract with Catalyst, he interrupted. Well, with Mark's version of it. And we'd like to contract with you directly for our next phase of work. Assuming you're planning to keep working in this industry. I wasn't sure what I was planning, but in that moment I made a decision. Actually, I'm starting a new agency. Same strategic approach, same commitment to results, but with the values that Catalyst was supposed to have from the beginning. Marcus laughed. Good. Send me a proposal when you're set up. We're with you. That conversation gave me hope and a strategy. If Mark wanted to hollow out Catalyst and start over, I could do the same thing, but I could do it with integrity, taking the clients who valued my work and building something new from the ashes. I filed LLC paperwork that night for Phoenix Strategic, because I'm apparently the kind of person who chooses obvious metaphorical names when I'm sleep-deprived and furious. I set up a basic website using a template and my own savings of what amounted to $847, everything I had left after lawyer fees. Within a week, 3 more clients had followed Velocity. Mark was probably losing his mind, but I wouldn't know. We weren't speaking except through lawyers. The court hearing arrived faster and slower than I expected. Time had become strange, each day dragging while the weeks blurred together. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, and less dramatic. No jury, just Judge Catherine Hendricks, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair, and an expression that suggested she'd seen every variety of human foolishness. Mark showed up with his lawyer, Richard Vance, who looked like he charged $800 an hour and enjoyed it. Mark had apparently decided to dress for the role of successful entrepreneur. Expensive suit, confident posture, the kind of easy smile that suggested he thought this was all a minor inconvenience. I wanted to throw something at him. Patricia had prepared me extensively. "Stay calm," she'd said. "Don't react to anything Mark or his lawyer says. Show the judge that you're the reasonable one." Richard went first, arguing that I was a disgruntled ex-wife trying to sabotage Mark's legitimate business interests. He painted Mark as the real entrepreneur, the one who'd taken risks while I'd been primarily focused on creative work rather than business operations. He suggested my lockout was a necessary measure to protect the company during a difficult transition. "Ms. Chun would have you believe that Mr. Harrison has engaged in some elaborate conspiracy," Richard said smoothly. "The reality is much simpler. Mr. Harrison is the majority owner of Catalyst Marketing, a position he earned through his capital contributions and his leadership. He made difficult but necessary decisions to protect the company during his personal crisis. Ms. Parker's recent attempts to poach clients only confirmed that his concerns about her were justified." I felt Patricia tense beside me, but she kept her expression neutral. Then it was our turn. Patricia stood, and her entire demeanor changed. The kind, patient lawyer I'd been working with vanished, replaced by someone who could have prosecuted war crimes. "Your Honor, what Mr. Vance describes as difficult but necessary decisions is actually a calculated campaign of fraud and theft. My client co-founded Catalyst Marketing with Mr. Harrison 10 years ago, as equal partners. She contributed not only her initial capital but hundreds of hours of strategic work that built the company's reputation. Mr. Harrison has systematically stripped her of her ownership rights through fraudulent restructuring, locked her out of the business she built, and is now attempting to destroy any evidence of his wrongdoing." Patricia presented Rebecca's documents, walking Judge Hendricks through the evidence of Mark's self-dealing. She showed the transfers to his personal real estate accounts. She demonstrated the pattern of exclusion and manipulation. She painted a picture of a man who'd spent years positioning himself to steal everything from his wife and business partner. Richard objected constantly, calling the evidence hearsay, and from a disgruntled former employee. But Patricia was ready for every challenge. She'd subpoenaed bank records that confirmed the transfers. She had emails from Mark himself that contradicted his current claims. She'd built a case that was impossible to ignore. Judge Hendricks listened to everything, her expression unreadable. When both lawyers finished, she asked a single question. "Mr. Vance, did your client use marital assets to purchase real estate properties in his name only during the course of the marriage?" Richard hesitated for just a second too long. "The properties were purchased with funds from the business, which Mr. Harrison has majority ownership of." "That's not what I asked. Were the funds used to purchase these properties marital assets?" The classification of business funds in a divorce is complex. "It's a yes or no question, counsel." Richard looked at Mark, who was no longer smiling. "Yes, Your Honor, but—" "Then I've heard enough." Judge Hendricks made a note on her pad. "I'm granting Ms. Parker's emergency motion. Effective immediately, Mr. Harrison is prohibited from making any major business decisions regarding Catalyst Marketing without court approval. I'm appointing a temporary neutral manager to oversee operations until we can sort out the ownership dispute. Neither party is to interfere with the business or its operations without going through the manager. We'll reconvene in 60 days for a full hearing on the ownership question." She banged her gavel and it was over. Mark looked like he'd been punched. Richard was already whispering urgently in his ear. I sat frozen, not quite believing what had just happened. "We won," Patricia said quietly. "This is a significant victory, Sarah. The temporary manager will stabilize the business and prevent Mark from doing any more damage." But as we filed out of the courtroom, I caught Mark's expression. He wasn't defeated. He was furious, yes, but more than that, he was calculating. This wasn't over. If anything, I just escalated the war. I was right to be worried. The temporary manager was a professional mediator named Glenn Hutchins, and he took over Catalyst with the enthusiasm of a man who'd seen too many business divorces and had no patience for either party's drama. He held a meeting with Mark and me where he laid out his expectations. We would both have limited access, all major decisions would go through him, and if either of us tried to sabotage the process, he'd recommend the court hold us in contempt. "I've read the filings," Glenn said, his voice flat. "You've both behaved badly. Now you're going to behave like professionals, or I'm going to make your lives very difficult." Understood. I nodded. Mark crossed his arms but didn't argue. For about 3 weeks there was an uneasy peace. Glenn stabilized the client relationships, reassured the employees, and started untangling the financial mess Mark had created. David, my forensic accountant, worked alongside Glenn's team to trace the money Mark had moved. What they found was worse than I'd imagined. Mark hadn't just siphoned $300,000 into real estate. He'd been systematically draining the company for over 2 years, moving money into hidden accounts, overpaying himself, and even creating fake vendor invoices for payments to shell companies he controlled. The total amount he'd stolen from our business, from our shared marital assets, was close to $900,000. How did I not see this? I asked David, staring at the spreadsheets he'd compiled. Because you trusted him, David said simply, and because he was smart about it. Small amounts over time mixed in with legitimate expenses. Unless you were specifically looking for fraud, you'd never notice. Patricia was gleeful in a professional, controlled way. This is gold, Sarah. This isn't just divorce court material anymore. This is actual criminal fraud. We can file charges if you want to go that route. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see Mark in handcuffs, but the practical part of me knew that criminal proceedings would take years and might not get me any closer to recovering my business. What will get me Catalyst back? I asked. Honestly, probably nothing. Even if we prove Mark stole from the business, even if we win full ownership for you, he's already done so much damage that the company may not be salvageable. Most of the employees have left. The clients are split between his new venture and your new agency. The reputation is shot. So I've been fighting for nothing. No. You've been fighting for justice, which you're going to get. And you've been protecting your financial future. Every dollar we prove Mark stole is a dollar you can claim in the divorce settlement. You might not get the company, but you'll get enough money to build something new. It wasn't the victory I'd imagined when I started this fight, but it was something. The final hearing was scheduled for October, 8 months after Mark had first locked me out. By then, Phoenix Strategic was generating enough revenue that I could pay myself a small salary. I'd hired 2 junior strategists and was working out of a co-working space. It wasn't Catalyst, but it was mine and nobody could take it from me. Mark, meanwhile, had launched his new venture, Apex Marketing. He'd taken about half of Catalyst's former employees and maybe 40% of the clients. He tried to take more, but Glenn had been aggressive about enforcing non-compete clauses and client ownership rules. The hearing took 3 days. Both sides presented evidence, testimony, expert witnesses. Rebecca testified about Mark's fraudulent practices. David walked the judge through the financial evidence of theft. Mark's lawyer argued that I was exaggerating, that business decisions weren't the same as theft, that I was just bitter about the divorce. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, Judge Hendricks delivered her ruling. She found that Mark had engaged in systematic fraud and self-dealing that violated his fiduciary duty to the company and to me as his partner. She ruled that the restructuring that had reduced my ownership was invalid because my signatures had been obtained through misrepresentation. She restored our ownership to 50/50. But then she said what Patricia had warned me she might. Given the extensive damage to the business and the impossibility of these parties working together, I'm ordering the dissolution of Catalyst Marketing. The company's remaining assets will be liquidated, and the proceeds will be divided according to the legitimate ownership structure. 50% to Ms. Parker, 50% to Mr. Harrison. She also ordered Mark to pay restitution for the funds he'd stolen. $900,000 to be paid over 5 years with interest. And she awarded me a significant portion of the marital assets, including one of the real estate properties Mark had purchased with stolen money. Additionally, Judge Hendricks continued, looking directly at Mark, I'm referring this matter to the state attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Mr. Harrison, you should consider yourself lucky that your former wife chose the civil route first. Not many people would show that restraint. Mark's face had gone gray. Richard was whispering urgently, probably already calculating the cost of a criminal defense. I felt empty. I'd won. I'd proven Mark was a fraud and a thief. I'd gotten financial compensation and legal validation. But Catalyst, the company I'd spent 10 years building, was dead. Outside the courthouse, Patricia gave me a brief hug. You did good, Sarah. Most people in your position would have given up months ago. I don't feel like I did good. I feel like I lost everything. You lost a company, but you kept your integrity, your reputation, and your future. And you proved that Mark couldn't just erase you. That matters. Maybe it did. In that moment, standing in the autumn sunlight with my lawyer's words echoing in my ears, I wasn't sure about anything except that I was exhausted down to my bones. The epilogue to this story isn't clean or triumphant. Real life rarely is. Catalyst liquidation took another 6 months. The remaining assets were minimal, some furniture, some equipment, some intellectual property that nobody wanted. I ended up with about $87,000 from the liquidation, far less than the company should have been worth if Mark hadn't destroyed it. Mark did eventually face criminal charges: mail fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement. His lawyer negotiated a plea deal: 18 months in federal prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution. He served 13 months before being released for good behavior. I didn't attend his sentencing. By then I'd spent enough time in courtrooms, and I didn't need to see his face ever again. The restitution payments came sporadically. Mark claimed poverty, argued the judgment was excessive, delayed whenever possible. His lawyer filed motion after motion. I hired a collections attorney who garnished his wages and put liens on his remaining assets. It became another form of warfare, quieter but just as exhausting. Jessica, interestingly, left him 6 months after the affair became public knowledge. Turned out that being with a charismatic entrepreneur was appealing until that entrepreneur was a convicted felon with massive debt and a ruined reputation. She sent me an apology email 2 years later. Long, rambling, full of excuses about how Mark had manipulated her too. I deleted it without responding. Some bridges don't deserve rebuilding. Rebecca became one of my closest friends. She joined Phoenix Strategic after her non-compete expired, bringing her client relationships and her sharp strategic mind. Together, we built something better than Catalyst had ever been. A company with actual values, with transparency, with systems designed to prevent any one person from having too much power. Linda, Tom, and Aisha all eventually joined us too, along with a handful of other former Catalyst employees who'd grown disillusioned with Mark's leadership. We talked openly about what had happened, used it as a case study in how businesses could go wrong when you prioritize growth over ethics. Phoenix Strategic grew slowly, deliberately. We hit 7 figures in revenue by year 3, but we never chased scale the way Mark and I had with Catalyst. We turned down clients who gave us bad vibes. We built in vacation time and mental health days. We created profit-sharing structures so that everyone benefited from success. It wasn't the empire I'd imagined when I was 28 and drunk on ambition. It was better, sustainable, healthy mine. The divorce itself finalized 2 years after Mark's initial betrayal, after mountains of paperwork and a settlement agreement that ran 47 pages. I got the house. Mark couldn't afford to keep it anyway with his legal fees and restitution obligations. I sold it immediately. Too many memories, and none of them I wanted to keep. I bought a small condo downtown, furnished it with things that were purely mine, and adopted a dog named Gatsby because I apparently couldn't resist literary references even in my pet naming choices. The condo had a home office with huge windows, and I'd sit there in the mornings with coffee and Gatsby at my feet, working on strategy decks, and feel something that took me months to recognize as peace. But I'd be lying if I said I healed cleanly or completely. Betrayal like Mark's doesn't just damage your business or your marriage, it damages your ability to trust yourself. For years afterward, I second-guessed every instinct, every decision, every relationship. If I'd been so wrong about Mark, how could I trust my judgment about anything else? Therapy helped. My therapist, Dr. Sandra Morrison, was a no-nonsense woman who called me out when I tried to intellectualize my trauma instead of feeling it. "You're treating this like a business problem," she said during one session. "Something to analyze and solve. But it's not. It's grief. You lost a partner, a company, a version of yourself you'd invested everything in. You don't solve grief. You sit with it." So I sat with it. I let myself be angry, then devastated, then angry again. I went through phases where I checked Mark's social media obsessively, torturing myself with updates about his life. Then phases where I blocked him everywhere and pretended he'd never existed. I dated briefly, disastrously, backing away the moment anyone got close. I threw myself into work until Rebecca staged an intervention and forced me to take a vacation. The vacation was to Iceland solo, 2 weeks, no work. I hiked through lava fields and soaked in hot springs and watched the northern lights alone in the cold darkness. And somewhere in that vast, empty landscape, I finally let go of the question that had been haunting me. Why? Why had Mark done it? Why had he thrown away our partnership, our marriage, everything we'd built? Why had he chosen cruelty when he could have chosen honesty? The truth was, I'd never know. Mark's motivations were his own. tangled up in whatever insecurities and ambitions drove him. Maybe he'd always planned to cut me out. Maybe the affair had changed something in him. Maybe he'd convinced himself that he deserved it all, that I'd been holding him back. It didn't matter. His reasons didn't change what had happened, and understanding them wouldn't undo the damage. The only thing I could control was how I moved forward. So I decided to move forward by telling the story. I started writing about my experience 18 months after the divorce finalized. At first, it was just for myself, pages and pages in a private journal trying to make sense of the chaos. But then a friend who ran a business publication asked if I'd be willing to write about entrepreneurship and divorce for their audience. The article went viral. Apparently, I wasn't alone. Hundreds of people, mostly women but not exclusively, reached out to share their own stories of business partners who betrayed them, spouses who'd stolen from them, collaborators who'd erased their contributions. The common thread in all the stories was the same. Someone had trusted someone else, and that trust had been weaponized against them. I started speaking about the experience at entrepreneurship conferences, always with a knot in my stomach. Talking publicly about what Mark had done felt like volunteering for humiliation. Admitting that I'd been naive, that I'd been victimized, that my marriage and business had failed spectacularly. But the response was overwhelmingly supportive. The speaking engagements led to consulting work. I started advising entrepreneurs on how to structure their businesses to protect against partner disputes. I helped people create agreements with clear governance structures, exit strategies, and dispute resolution mechanisms. I became, ironically, an expert in preventing the exact disaster that had destroyed my first company. Phoenix Strategic expanded into this niche. We developed a whole practice area around helping family businesses and partnerships navigate difficult transitions. Rebecca joked that we should thank Mark for giving us such a compelling origin story. I didn't find it funny, but I understood her point. He tried to destroy me, and instead I'd built something better from the wreckage. 5 years after Mark's initial betrayal, I ran into him at a coffee shop. It was completely random. I was meeting a client in a neighborhood I rarely visited, and there he was in line ahead of me. Older, grayer, wearing a cheap suit instead of the expensive ones he used to favor. He didn't notice me at first, too focused on checking his phone. My first instinct was to leave. I didn't owe him a conversation. I didn't need closure. I'd built that for myself. But something made me stay, maybe curiosity about who he'd become after everything. He turned with his coffee and nearly dropped it when he saw me. "Sarah." His voice was hoarse, uncertain. "Mark." An awkward pause stretched between us. He looked like he wanted to say something, started to speak, then stopped. Finally, "You look good. I mean, you look well." "Thank you." Another pause. The coffee shop chatter filled the silence around us. "I heard about Phoenix Strategic," he said. "Sounds like you're doing well." "We are." He nodded, shifted his weight. "I'm working as a consultant now. Marketing strategy for small businesses." "It's fine." "Not what I..." He cut himself off. "Anyway, it's fine." I could see the weight of the last 5 years in his face. The legal battles, the prison time, the destroyed reputation. Part of me felt satisfaction. A smaller part felt something closer to pity. "Why did you do it?" The question came out before I could stop it. "You could have just asked for a divorce. We could have split things fairly. Why did you have to try to take everything?" Mark looked at his coffee, at the floor, anywhere but at me. "I don't know. I told myself I deserved more because I'd done more, but that was bullshit. Honestly, I think I was scared." "Of what?" "Of not matching without you. You were always the brilliant one, the one clients actually wanted to work with. I was just the guy who sold your ideas. And when things started falling apart between us, I panicked. I thought if I could take the company, prove I could run it without you, then maybe I'd actually be worth something." He laughed bitterly. Obviously that worked out great. It wasn't the explanation I'd expected. No grand justification. No elaborate rationalization. Just fear and ego and the stupid choices people make when they're desperate to prove something. "You ruined lives, Mark." "Mine, yes, but also our employees, our clients, your own. All because you were scared of being irrelevant." "I know." His voice cracked. "I know, and I'm sorry. I've tried to say that through lawyers, through letters, but I know it doesn't mean anything. Sorry doesn't fix what I broke." He was right. It didn't fix anything. But hearing him acknowledge the damage without excuses, released something in my chest I hadn't realized was still tight. "I hope you figure things out," I said finally. "I hope you build something you can be proud of, something you don't have to steal." I left before he could respond. I didn't need his gratitude or his further apologies. That conversation wasn't for him. It was for me. A final punctuation mark on a chapter I'd been trying to close for years. Outside, the spring air was cool and clean. I walked to my car, called my client to confirm our meeting, and drove away from that coffee shop and that version of my life without looking back. Today, 7 years after Mark sent that 2:47 a.m. email that detonated my life, I'm sitting in Phoenix Strategic's office. A real office now with exposed brick we actually chose instead of settling for, watching my team present strategy to a Fortune 500 client. Rebecca is leading the pitch, brilliant and confident. Aisha, who was a junior strategist when this started, is now our VP of Client Strategy. Tom's designs are being featured in industry publications. We're not the biggest agency in the city. We're not the flashiest. But we're profitable, stable, and built on a foundation that won't crack the moment things get difficult. I think about Mark sometimes, but less and less. He's become a cautionary tale I tell. A character in a story about survival and rebuilding. Not a real person who still has power over my emotions. The restitution money still trickles in monthly, deposited automatically into an account I barely check. I don't need it. Phoenix Strategic provides well for me, and I've rebuilt my savings. Most of it goes to a scholarship fund I started for young women entrepreneurs. Maybe helping them avoid my mistakes is worth more than the money sitting in an account gathering interest. People often ask if I do anything differently knowing what I know now. Would I have still started Catalyst with Mark? Would I have protected myself better? Insisted on clearer agreements? Paid more attention to the warning signs? The truth is, I don't know. 28-year-old Sarah made the best decision she could with the information and experience she had. I can't judge her for trusting her husband and business partner. Trust isn't stupidity, even when it's betrayed. What I would tell her, though, if I could go back is this: build your own life raft while you're building the ship. Have your own money, your own connections, your own identity separate from any partnership. Don't let anyone, not a husband, not a business partner, not anyone, become so central to your existence that losing them means losing yourself. And maybe this: you're stronger than you think. The worst thing you can imagine surviving? You'll survive it. And you'll build something beautiful from the rubble. Last month, we signed our biggest client ever. A tech company worth $2 billion that wanted to completely reinvent their brand positioning. The contract was worth more than Catalyst's entire first-year revenue. Rebecca and I celebrated with expensive champagne, the kind we couldn't have afforded in those early, desperate years. Think Mark knows about this? Rebecca asked, scrolling through the press release on her phone. Probably. Does it matter? She considered this, then shook her head. No, I guess it doesn't. And that was the truth of it. Mark had taken so much from me, years of my life, my first business, my ability to trust easily. But he hadn't taken my talent, my resilience, or my capacity to build something meaningful. Those were always mine, even when I couldn't see them through the wreckage. The company he stole is dead. The marriage he destroyed is over. The person I was when all this started has been transformed by fire into someone harder, but also more real, more honest, more capable of joy, because I know exactly how devastating loss can be. Gatsby, older now, gray around the muzzle, sleeps under my desk while I work. My team is in the conference room laughing about something I can't quite hear. But somewhere in that struggle, I found something Mark never managed to take. Proof that I was capable of building empires with or without him. I just needed to believe it. And now I'm not just surviving. I'm not just rebuilding. I'm thriving. And that's the revenge he never saw coming. Not that I wanted to destroy him, but that I didn't need to. His actions destroyed him. I just needed to keep going, keep building, keep becoming the person I was always meant to be. The business Mark stole is gone. But I'm still here. And I'm just getting started. If there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this: protection isn't the opposite of trust. It's the foundation that makes trust possible. When I started Catalyst with Mark, I thought having clear legal agreements meant I didn't trust him. I thought partnership meant sharing everything equally without boundaries. I thought love meant never questioning, never protecting yourself, never preparing for the worst. I was wrong about all of it. The healthiest partnerships, in business, in marriage, in any collaboration, are built on transparency, clear agreements, and systems that protect everyone involved. Not because you expect betrayal, but because you respect everyone enough to make sure there's no confusion about roles, ownership, or what happens if things go wrong.